Hi, I'm Somer Hackley,
Hi, I'm Zen Mac. This is the Art of Search Hiring Manager series.
and these are stories and insights about all things hiring. Well, Zen, it is so great to see you yet again. Thanks for joining us. So, yes, as always. So, today I wanted to introduce you to Mike Gionfriddo. So, a little bit about Mike. So, he is the co-founder and CTO at Tallied. So, he's leading the product and technology teams in building an end-to-end operating system for credit card programs. And I've known Mike for, I don't even know, probably over a decade now. It's one of those people when you check in, you're like, I don't even know. I've known you forever. And I actually placed him in the past. And as any recruiter knows, anytime you kind of go through that process with someone, you start talking to them on a day-to-day basis for a long time. That's when you really, really get to know someone is through all those frequent conversations when you go through that together. And I cannot even tell you, he's thoughtful, he's humble, such good positive energy, and he's the kind of person I love to stay in touch with. I just can't say enough good things about him. So, of course, when we launched the podcast, I had to reach out to Mike and ask him to join. So I'm really thrilled that he's here. So, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Well, Summer, thank you for that introduction. Likewise, again, I don't know how long we've known each other either, but it's been a while. And again, always enjoy our conversations and working with you. Really fantastic. And I value our relationship. So,
Likewise. Well, thank you. So I have known you for a while. And you have this unique blend of being technical, you've been a distinguished engineer, you've also led teams in startups, you've led teams in large companies, you've had teams of 200 people under you. And so I'd love your perspective on this. So when it comes to hiring, how is your approach similar or different when you're hiring for startups or for large companies?
yeah. So, I really view the fundamentals as being the same, right? Is the person going to be a good fit on the team? Are they good problem solvers? Do they have the right skill set? Really, though, I have a different lens or different emphasis depending on the company size and really the stage of the company. So in a startup, you need to understand if someone can really make it and or excel in a startup environment because it is very different. It's very demanding, and it can tax you quite a bit, and you need to be sort of ready for that. Uh, in an interview process, that's really hard to figure out. Again, one of the best indicators is has someone performed well in a startup environment, and that's not easy to find out, right? And so I really look for a candidate they can think on their feet. Um, as a leader, you're going to have context switch all the time in the startup. If someone is like, I got to work heads down and do one task during the day, they're not going to do well in a startup.
Mm.
I have a few red flags when someone says something to me like, hey, I've always wanted to try a startup. And like, well, you don't really know what that means. And or someone really says, hey, tell me in great detail what your process for doing development is, or what's your product process. And it's like, look, that a lot of that goes out the window when you are at a startup just because you're reacting to the market, reacting to customers, etc. So um, and the other thing is you can't have it doesn't always translate to have a great record at a larger company translates into a startup environment. There are two things that I look for that are related. Fit and grit. So does the person fit in the team? Are they going to have the stamina and sort of the grit to work in this environment? Um, in an established organization, oftentimes you're looking for a more specific role. So there, I focus a little more on skills and problem solving at scale.
Mhm.
Because when you have a team of 10 people versus a team of 50 or 100, you need to think about that differently. Um, and again, the person joining this team, fit is still important in the team, but again, now you have a broader team, how they worked in cross-functional teams before, that's going to be important. And, sort of in the inverse, if someone was successful at a startup, they aren't necessarily going to be uh, do well in a larger company as well because they just don't have some of those experiences.
I think that's super insightful. And coming from large or startup companies, you do have a different emphasis. I don't want to say priority because that's incorrect, but the emphasis is on reaction times and a little bit of chaos, but a healthy kind of chaos, and the ability to roll with things. Versus, I think, in a larger sense, in the larger company, the specificity of the skill set is, I think, comes out as one of the priorities when we go recruiting for them. Or at least that's what I see when I'm being asked to recruit. But that's a really good point. One thing I would add too is the interview process itself is, I think, unique in a startup environment versus something a little bit more process-wise and larger. In a startup environment, you just don't have as many people to interview or the availability of people to interview, I think. So that tends to move a little bit more fluidly. Whereas in a larger organization, I think you have the luxury of process and really sticking to that. This is what step one is. This is what step two is. This is what step three is at scale.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's very true. The process just goes more quickly because
Hmm.
we don't have as many people, right?
Yeah.
And so we can really do that honestly in a week because we just don't have
Yeah.
many.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so glad to be here and to meet you. Uh, can you tell us a little bit about a time where, let's say, a candidate was interviewing with you and they're also interviewing with other companies. So how would you balance your gating and interviewing and screening versus, say, selling them? Like, what do you do first? What do you second? How do you do both, really?
Yeah, and so first of all, I just assume that really good candidates are interviewing at multiple companies. I just go in with that mindset. Um, I have a little trick, maybe it's called a cheat, is I always like to go last in the interview process. And that gives me some time to figure out from the other individuals on the panel what they're feeling, what they are thinking, what questions they still have in their mind, so I can ask those as well. But I think, in general, it's probably 60% of the time selling, 40% of the time interviewing. Um, I always like to lead with what questions do you have to a candidate? So I'm trying to get to what's really important to the candidate. And I'm trying to understand, again, what makes them tick, what gets them excited. And so as I'm listening, I'm sort of formulating, hey, this is how I'm going to sell the candidate. If someone is really interested in doing innovative software, we can say, hey, we're doing these really cool things on the team. It's really taking a really innovative approach to something. If someone is interested in growing a team, I could more emphasize like, hey, we're small now. This is our plan as we grow. So again, trying to really find out what gets that candidate, excites them and motivate them. I'll generally always explain sort of the opportunity of the company, the opportunity for the individual. I tend to emphasize, hey, this is going to really help you learn and
Mm,
grow. I find I like to work with people that are always in that growth and learning mindset. So I do tend to do that.
mm,
And I ask, questions like, tell me about a time that your team had a great success. And, and then depending on how they answer that, right? I mean,
mhm.
we ship, so many units, we had so many customers, or man, the team really came together. That really gives me a good sense then of what the person is passionate about. And again, we can, sort of talk about that in the context of the role in the company.
I like that a lot. And I think asking the question about growth mindset or their eagerness to learn also functions as a gate, right? Because if their response is I know what I know. I'm good. I
Yeah,
don't really want to learn anything. Then I think that's more of a screen for you than it is a sell at that point.
absolutely. And compensation is, I don't want to
Yeah.
downplay that in any way, but if the first question is how much is my signing bonus going to be,
Yeah.
probably not going to, probably not going to fit well with me and the other people on the team.
Right. Especially since you're the last interviewer. The
Right.
and that's the first thing that they want to find out. Last question, Mike. Suppose you face challenges attracting qualified candidates, and that could be at the top of the funnel, that could be as the interviews kind of go on, the candidates start withdrawing. How would you diagnose that issue, or what are the first things that you do if this job has been open for a while?
Yeah, and so I'm going to really talk about this in a bit of a context. First, about working with outstanding recruiters who I happen to know one right here. Uh,
Ooh.
in yeah, look at that be. And so first of all, don't expect you're going to have a kickoff meeting with a recruiter and next week 10 great candidates show up. That's not how it works, right? You have to be willing to sort of iterate, calibrate with that recruiter. Talk to two or three people, see where those candidates sort of fit. So I think you really be a little patient,
Hmm.
work with your recruiter and, have them, really help send you the right candidates, right? And so I think that's important. I think I've run into people who go, I talked to this recruiter and we had a kickoff meeting. I don't have any good candidates. It's like, how long has it been? It's been 2 weeks. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? Um, I'm one to always sort of, if things aren't moving along, is it the messaging, right, that I'm giving? Is it the messaging that, how can we tweak the messaging for the recruiting partner, right? The other thing I have found, especially in today's environment, titles and roles
Mm.
all jumbled up. A number of years ago, it'd be like, VP of engineering, director of engineering. Now we have head of engineering. Now we have CTO and, CTPO, right? Now you have CTO, but I need a head of AI. And, trying, it's like trying to figure out like where the right person and the titles live. That's going to take some time as well, especially when it comes to sort of data and AI, because there's a whole jumble of names out there. And so I think, again, that is a shared responsibility between the recruiter and you to understand that, right? So, and the one thing I do if I'm stalled is I'll just reach out to some of my peers and say, hey, have you
Mm.
guys hired, a director of engineering, a VP of engineering recently? What did you find worked, right? And again, I just picking up, some tips and tricks from those people, I think is useful as well. I like to learn from successes of my peers. Uh, and unfortunately in today's environment, there's just been kind of layoffs and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think, that can be an opportunity for you as a hiring manager. Um, no doubt in every layoff, there's probably some, really solid people, really solid leaders in there. Maybe some of them are ready to take a step. And so don't hesitate just because they've been laid off to reach out
Mm.
into that pool of people. There's almost always some either good engineers or good
Yeah.
leaders in that pool, and they've been caught in, sometimes an unfortunate circumstance.
Totally get it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's super insightful. And I wanted to go back to the bit about the creative tidalness that that has occurred. I suppose in the last couple of years, really, as the market was hotter, I think one of the levers that people were able to pull is titling. And And then unfortunately or fortunately, it was a crutch in recruiting, right? Because I've also talked to a lot of folks who are really good at what they do. They're great at their job. Couldn't care less what you called them, right?
Mhm.
Just let them tackle the problem. Let them be part of this team. That's the right fit, and the title itself will sort itself out. And quite frankly, people don't keep their titles forever in every organization anyway. And so that creative titling made things a little bit more difficult from a sourcing perspective. But I think if we're open-minded to the actual experience itself and compared size and scope, I think that title problem tends to kind of run its own course and it does what it does. But we're finding the right people, I think.
No, I agree 100% with you. That has certainly been a crutch in the past, and candidates have used that as a lever. And
Hmm.
you know, the title itself is very specific to that organization, right?
Yeah,
And so it doesn't always translate well. Um,
right.
on my team,
Hmm.
everyone's an engineer.
Yeah,
There's no senior engineer, there's no architect, there's no because we just put that all aside. And it's like, we
yeah,
all have to work on pieces of the system. Again, we're a small company, so
yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I love everything you shared, Mike, and your commentary too, Zen. And I was going to say a lot of what was unsaid here was I think some of the behind the scenes. So when you first said I do the last round interview, what I want to make sure the listeners who are listening to this take away from that is it likely means that you're spending some time with the people that are doing the first round interview so
right.
that they're set up for success. Because I've seen situations where candidates may, if that's not set up well, they may withdraw before you even get the opportunity to talk to them.
Mm.
And so when you're talking about that process and working with the recruiter, there's so much behind the scenes that you're doing to set people up to be aligned in what the role is, how to position the company, how to sell it while still assessing for it, so that when they get to you or when the recruiter is approaching somebody, that it's the right kind of message. And I love how you cater that sell to the person and to the talent pool, because I think that's so critical. And I do the same thing where I ask around too, like before I kick off something like full blown, like I'll ask people like in that subset, like people that manage that group of candidates. I'm like, hey, how would you pitch this? Or what motivates these types of people? Because what motivates a security person versus a data person versus an engineering person, like, it's not the same. You can't
Not the,
just you can't just blanket statement that out there. So yeah, I love everything you shared today. So thank you for that.
well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
absolutely.
opportunity for letting me share this. It's
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us, and yeah, we look forward to chatting with you again. And thanks, Zen. Thanks for being here as always with your wisdom. And Mike, thanks for sharing everything that you shared today.
all right. Yeah, very welcome. Take care all.
All right, take care.